has adopted such a ruthless colonialist behavior with regard to East Timor. Let me stress that Portugal has no claims whatsoever to the sovereignty over East Timor. Our sole aim is to bring about its decolonization process in observance of the principles of the United Nations Charter, and any choice, I repeat, any choice to be freely expressed by the population concerned would be fully respected by Portugal. I would remind you again that East Timor is proportionally one of the most serious cases confronting the international community when we analyze the human rights situation over there. That's why we do not agree with those who claim that the human rights situation in East Timor had improved before the November 12th massacre. It was a massacre, not an incident. It was not an isolated fact. We see it as a repetition of a pattern confirmed by the analysis of other governments and NGOs everywhere. We also fear that any such incidents will recur while the underlying causes remain unresolved. Let me also point out that we feel, in Portugal, we feel that the end of the Cold War should enable certain countries to make a different evaluation of the situation in East Timor. We should not draw a distinction between good and bad human rights violators. For us, there is only a definition for those who violate, who do not comply with the rules of international law. And quite honestly, we feel that we should stop looking under our beds for Marxist movements as a kind of a stalking horse for condoning unspeakable human rights violators from a number of governments. We also feel that it's fruitless to engage in comparisons on the development in East Timor between the Portuguese rule and Indonesian colonization. I think that we should not omit the burdensome and unjustified human hardships resulting from the occupation, because it is an occupation and it is going on at this point. And we just say that if the development had brought well-being to the East Timorese, the presence of up to 20,000 soldiers would not be necessary. We know that the control of the hearts and minds of the people is a well-known practice of repression, and it is used when other tools of terror prove ineffective. We have that experience because we were, unfortunately, a former colonial power until '74. And the coup, which was referred as a leftist coup, and which brought us democracy in Portugal in '74, was over coup. Let me underline also that as we speak, Timorese civilians are, quote, standing trial, unquote, in Jakarta and Dili. And we feel that we should bear in mind that Indonesia is still ignoring the assurances it gave on March 4 when it subscribed to the Human Rights Commission consensus, which called on it to improve the human rights situation in East Timor, to facilitate access to the territory for human rights organizations, and to ensure a fair trial for the civilians arrested during and after the Santa Cruz massacre. In addition, despite those assurances, Indonesia continues to detain individuals not charged with acts of violence. In conclusion, let me just say that we consider encouraging that the administration's support to the talks between Portugal and Indonesia to resolve the East Timor question. The United States are friendly and country and an ally of Portugal, and that means that we are able to engage in a very frank discussion on these issues as well on other issues. But I would say that I would remind you that we propose that with no preconditions, negotiations between all parties concerned, and that includes the representatives of the East Timorese people, would be initiated as soon as Indonesia would be ready for that. We are ready to talk, and we said that on January the 24th in a proposal that my foreign minister presented to the Secretary General of the United Nations. We just hope that Indonesians, who have not yet given an answer to this proposal, replace their well-known readiness for repression with a readiness to discuss the issue in a constructive way. Thank you.
I guess the tradition is to, goodness, there are 2 microphones. I wasn't aware of that. So let's move. No political connotations from left to right and then back to left and back to right. And can I ask you to keep these very clearly questions and not comments? The first was really meant to be a comment. The others are not. So keep them brief. Give a chance for more people to ask questions. Address them either to a particular panel member or generally, and whoever will respond. Yes.
I'd just like to start with, start and finish with 2 very brief observations. I give my thanks to the Kennedy School for providing this quite riveting display of very grim reality on the one side and very black fantasy by the State Department on the other. As an Australian, I would like to point out my sense of outrage that must join many Americans in this audience. The Australian government has been almost as culpable as the American government in supporting the present regime in Indonesia. May I take issue with Mr. Anderson, who paints a very benevolent picture of a cyclical colonial rule, which by his estimation in comparison with the Dutch, we will only see 284 more years of this sort of brutality. Last observation is, can I point out that Dr. Chomsky has been an almost lone voice in the wilderness and has championed the rights of the East Timorese for many years before the November 12th massacre so grimly brought their plight to our attention. Can I ask Dr. Chomsky what he thinks should be done now by the international community in terms of trying to force these UN sanctions, which are ignored in so many cases and are obeyed in selected cases such as the war on Iraq, what steps he would advocate? Thank you.
Well, let me first, just to correct the record, say that Ben Anderson, I have been involved in this issue for a long time. Ben has been involved for a longer time, and in fact I started getting involved in part after reading and hearing what he was saying about it, and of course he knows about 100 times as much about this topic as I do. But now, as far as what should be done, well, you know, if the Iraq invasion of Kuwait is a model, what we ought to do is bomb Jakarta, obviously. In fact, probably nuke Jakarta, since, and in fact, while we're at it, we probably ought to nuke Washington because they've been supporting it. However, nobody assumes that the Iraq model has any meaning. This is regarded as the Kuwait model. I mean, this is just a total fraud. I can actually don't have time to do it, so let me do it now. One of the grand moments in my life, I should say, was just right before the U.S. and Britain started up the war in early January, mid-January last year. I succeeded in being denounced by 2 foreign ministers within about a week, Douglas Hurd of Great Britain and Gareth Evans of Australia. Evans was particularly upset because I quoted him. Which is, and if you hear what Australia is up to, you'll see that, you know, there's a lot of competitors for atrocity chief in this area.